are listening to a Freedom Student Ministry podcast.
In the Bible. Maybe you've heard of her before. She's pretty amazing. And her story is really amazing. So we're kind of going to have story time. So this is, you may have seen this on Facebook or Instagram. Oh, can you turn the lights off again? This is what you're going to be seeing for the next month and a half. Character studies. Hipster beard man and hair girl. Now we're talking about Ruth today. Okay? So you can flip the lights back on because you don't need to see this very well. Okay. So get comfy. Ready for this story?
Get comfy?
Don't get so comfy that you fall asleep. Okay. All right. Here we go. 15 minutes with me. Got it? Here we go. So Ruth was alive. Trey, can you sit up, buddy? Ruth was alive way before Jesus was, but she has a special connection to Jesus that I'm going to tell you guys about. Her story is written in the Old Testament. So you know what, I usually have you turn to the New Testament in your Bibles, but her story was written way longer before the times of Jesus came about. She was a Moabite. Say Moabite.
Moabite.
That meant she was from Moab. So we're like Washingtonians, if we're from Washington. Maybe not all of you are. But she was from Moab. She was a Moabite. And she was from that clan, and that clan was known for, it just had a bad reputation. There was incest, which means family members had kids together. It was icky. And that's where she was from. But to know her story, I want to tell you a little bit about her mother-in-law's story, Naomi. I wrote it up here. And Elimelech. Say Elimelech. Sometimes the more phlegm you say it with, the better. Elimelech. Sounds good. Okay. So, all right, you can practice later. Give me your best Elimelech later. All right. So Naomi was married to Elimelech, and they moved from Bethlehem. Who was born in Bethlehem? Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Lots of people, as Kellen said. Jesus was one of the main dudes that was born there that we know about. She was married to him, and she had 2 sons. Here's a son. Here's a son. They had 2 sons. They moved from Bethlehem to Moab because there was a giant famine in the land. Scarce food or no food at all. Huge famine. They were trying to find some food. They were trying to find a place to live. And they were quickly going hungry. So the crazy thing is, soon after the family moved there, Elimelech died. Isn't that crazy? So he's gone. It's just Naomi and her sons. Then the sons get married. This son marries Orpah, not Oprah. Orpah. And this son marries Ruth. About 10 years after Elimelech dies, though, this son dies and this son dies.
Oh, that sucks.
So therefore, it's just Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth. So, if you are Naomi, how do you think you feel at this point in her story? Raise your hand to tell me.
Depressed.
You might feel depressed.
Lost because your family's dead.
Lost because your family's dead.
Like you're losing all the men.
You're losing all the men. Sad.
You're asking God why.
You're asking God why.
Questioning things.
Questioning things? Yeah, can you raise your hand? Do you have something that you want to say, Teresa? Okay. Another word that I thought of, and that she even says a little bit later, if you actually read the story, which I encourage you to do. It's only 4 chapters, and it's a really powerful story. Naomi says she's bitter about the situation. It's a bitter thing to her. Let me see what other words. Hurt, resentful, and some things like you guys said. She's lonely. She's probably sad, and she's asking God why. When a person, or when you are any of those things, lonely, sad, depressed, hurt, bitter, resentful, angry, how are you or how would another person be acting? Raise your hand. How would you be if those are some feelings that you're experiencing, depression, loneliness, things like that? How would you behave?
Suicidal.
Okay. Sad?
Rude.
You might be rude. It's true. Would that kind of a person be any fun to be around?
No.
Not really. Are you very fun to be around when you're rude? No. You're not. Be honest. Okay. So the next thing that happens after the men die and it's just Naomi, Orpah, and Ruth, they're together at this point. The next thing that happens is Naomi heads back to Bethlehem. She wants to go back there. But she tells Orpah and Naomi, you need to go back to your families. Don't come with me. Leave me. Go home. Go to your parents. Live with them. So we're going to pick that story up in Ruth chapter 1. I'll just read it real fast. Chapter 1, verse 14. Chapter 1, verse 14. Naomi had just said, you guys need to leave. At this, the girls wept again. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law, Orpah, is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. Where you go, I will go, and where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. Where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, but be it ever so severely, if anything but death separates you and me. When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined to go with her, she stopped urging her. So who left? Who took off? Orpah. Who stayed? Ruth stayed. Why does Ruth stay? Why does she, as the Bible says, cling to Naomi? What do you guys think? Trey?
Last connection to her husband.
Okay.
Same thing I was about to say.
Corbs?
She loves her.
She loves her.
Pretty much the only family she has left.
Well, she does have family. Okay, wait, who?
And Naomi.
Yeah. Ruth has family back home that she can go to.
She likes Naomi.
She likes hanging out with Naomi. Anybody else have a thought? Those are good, you guys. Alex?
Feels for her, wants to take care of her.
Yeah. Trey?
Wants to help.
Wants to help?
Doesn't want to leave her alone.
Doesn't want to leave her alone. Why wouldn't she want to leave her alone?
Because you could die and no one would find
Because she's kind of
She's kind of old.
more rude,
She could get more rude.
more upset.
More, yeah, she could just keep kind of digging herself a hole of pity or something. Yeah. Here's some things that I thought of too. Those are really good. You got, oh, corpse? Yeah. So I think if we're talking about Ruth here, it shows her good character that she is sticking with someone who is no longer really related to her, right? I mean, she is her mother-in-law, but her husband is dead now. So it's like she doesn't have something tying her to being with her mother-in-law, with her in-laws' family. Also, Naomi is older and possibly needy in other ways. The word doesn't say. Maybe she's needy in other ways. She needs extra care. So she chooses to stay with her. She chooses to stay with Naomi where things are unsure, whereas she could have gone home like Orpah did. She could have gone with Orpah at that point, just kissed Naomi goodbye and said, you know, God bless, see ya when we're dead. I don't know. She could have said that, left, gone home, and been somewhere where she felt safe, where she knew people, where she was probably born, where she grew up, somewhere where she felt safe. So guys, she was possibly abandoning safety with her family to stay with Naomi. Even though this book is in the Old Testament, I mean, check this out. Remember when we usually go to the New Testament? We're way back here. So we're in the Old Testament right here. Even though it's in the Old Testament, it's still very relevant to us, and it still has foreshadowings of who in it? Of Jesus. You know what a foreshadow is? Something that comes before. It's like a prophecy, yeah. Foreshadowings of Jesus. Ruth is someone that we call a type of Christ. She acts like Christ in this story. Maybe your wheels are already spinning in your head going, huh, I recognize how she was acting like Jesus. So, you know, a type of Christ, is someone who exhibits Jesus' Christ-like qualities and who points us to him. So, now that I've told you that, and you may have already been thinking, raise your hand to tell me what types of qualities she has in her that remind you of Jesus. Riley?
Caring.
She's caring. Alex?
Selflessness.
She's selfless. Corbin? Undying love. That's so good.
Loyalty.
Loyalty. That's really good. And you know what? Rachel's like, man, I was going to say that. In my Bible at home, it doesn't say it in this one, I don't think. It says something about Ruth is loyal to Naomi. That's like a heading. So loyalty is even written in the heading there. Something that I was thinking about along those lines, you guys, is that Ruth chose Naomi. She chose to stay with her. Jesus chooses us. He chooses each of us. Okay? There's a really important connection there. Jesus sticks close with us, even if we're like Naomi and we kind of push him away. Naomi was pushing Ruth away. She was like, no, Ruth, go home. Don't stay with me. This whole situation is terrible. Just go to your family. Be well, be safe, leave me. Oftentimes, we can push Jesus away. We can say, Jesus, I just don't want to hang out with you right now. I want to do my own thing. Or Jesus, insert pushing away statement there, you know? Sometimes we make excuses as well. Like, man, Jesus wouldn't want to be with me. For Naomi, man, Ruth probably doesn't want to be with me. I just had this terrible situation, and Ruth has had to be a part of it. I feel so bad for her, you know? Sometimes we're like, man, Jesus wouldn't want to be with me. Like, the things that I've done in my life, the family that I come from, I wasn't created to be with him, and all those are lies. He chooses us no matter who we are, no matter where we come from. So there's a way that Ruth is being like Jesus in this story. So moving on to our next part of the story. So far, their story's been pretty bleak, hasn't it? It's been terrible. It's been awful. The picture, I want to show you a picture. Would you grab the light, Krista? When I think of famine, I mean, you might have thoughts in your head of images of famine. This is what I think of. Like, the land is dry and cracked down here. Looks like it hasn't had rain in a long time. The crops are completely dry. You might even see during famines, like, it's so dry that, and maybe a lightning strikes or somebody is careless with a fire or a match, and the fire would just break out and destroy any hope of crops that were left. That's another thought that I have when I think of famine, just like black, burnt out, smoking land. So there's no food, okay? It's super bleak. You can grab the light again. So that's the situation that they've been experiencing for a long time. Not only are people dying, but there's no food, okay? So keep thinking about that in your head. Just the terrible situation. And how maybe this applies to something that you guys are experiencing. Maybe in your family there are situations that might be considered bleak. Maybe parents who are arguing or are non-existent, or divorce or sickness, or just unhappiness, depression or something like that. Maybe there are those things going on in your house or in your friend circle or something like that. Maybe you would consider it bleak. But for Ruth and for Naomi and for all of us here, there's a cool word called hope. There is hope. And this is good for you to know even if you already know it, because you can think about this and apply it to other people's lives and be a Jesus-like character to them when their situation seems bleak. So back in these times, there was a custom that we don't have now, but it was a custom that when a woman's husband died, like Ruth's husband died, if there was a male relative that was still single, that male relative could marry the woman and continue the family name, continue the family line. Family line was extremely important back then. Extremely important. Inheritances were important. There was pride in carrying on a family name. There was pride in the name itself. It needed to be preserved. So you can imagine that Naomi, an extra amount of sadness or loss or something in her life was the family line wasn't going to be carried on because all the men had died. So she was probably pretty bummed out. The thing was, Ruth and Naomi knew of a man who could remedy this situation. And back then, this situation, this person was called a kinsman redeemer. Kinsman redeemer. I'll talk about that in a second. Ruth actually went and sought out, looked for this guy named Boaz. She went to find him because she knew that he could make the situation right again. So she actually went to the field where he was collecting wheat. I think maybe at this time the famine was over. I'm not sure. Do you know? Or it was starting to.
Better where they moved.
Better where they moved to. That's right.
Yeah, where they
Okay.
left was-
Yeah. So she went to his field that he owned. He was a wealthy guy who owned this field, who had tons of workers that would work in the field reaping the harvest. And so Ruth came and she's like, I'm going to work here and I'm going to see if I can come across this Boaz who could make my situation less bleak, who could continue the family name. So she goes and works alongside him. And this is cool too. She still displays amazing character. Like she was allowed to eat meals with the workers and with Boaz, and she would take the food that she didn't eat because they gave her a lot of food. She'd take it home to Naomi and she would share it with her and bring home some of the stuff that she had, the grains and stuff that she had gleaned, they call it. Pretty amazing. She was still just loving Naomi so well. Does anybody know anything else about Boaz? Well, some things I've told you so far are he was wealthy. Remember that. He had lots of workers. He was also a really kind, God-fearing man. When he greeted his workers in the morning, he'd be like, hey, blessings on you, that kind of thing. Like, hey, what was the specific one? I don't know. He greeted him with a blessing every morning. He was a really cool guy. He's also a type of Christ. He also exhibited Christ-like qualities, and we're going to see those in a second. So kinsman, do you know what that means?
Like family.
Family. It's actually specifically a male family member, a male relative. And a redeemer, check out the definition up here. It's from the dictionary. A person who brings goodness, honor, etc. to something again. So where goodness, honor was lost, he brings it. And he's a person who redeems something, okay? So like I said, Ruth sought out Boaz. She went to him and finds that he can be her kinsman redeemer. But listen to this, okay? This is where it gets interesting. Boaz knew there was another guy. There was another guy in the picture who could be the kinsman redeemer. So he goes to that guy and he says, hey, Ruth doesn't have a husband anymore, but she has all this land that came with the marriage and came with Naomi. Would you want to be her kinsman redeemer? And the guy's like, yeah, I want all that land. That'd be amazing. And then Boaz said, actually, you also have to marry her. And he said no. He rejected Ruth. So Boaz knew at that point that he could go and be the kinsman redeemer and inherit that land and continue the family line of Elimelech and make things right again. Pretty cool. He went to that guy, he said, hey, this is what's up. You know, he didn't just try to jump in and steal the whole thing. And the guy rejected Ruth. Check that out. He rejected Ruth. Have you been rejected in your life before? I've been rejected. It doesn't feel very good. Sometimes people see something in you that they don't like, or they're just a rude person, and they reject you. They don't hang out with you. They're silent around you, like they give you the silent treatment or something like that. Elena?
Would it be because she was a widow or just?
I think what it was is that he had an inheritance that he didn't want to give up. He didn't want to be a part of her family inheritance. He wanted to be a part of his or something like that, is what I read. The cool thing about her being rejected by this man, though, is that Boaz chose her, right? She was rejected, but she was also chose specifically by Boaz. He's like, I see her, I want to be her kinsman redeemer. Just like Jesus chooses us. Boaz didn't look at Ruth's history of being from being a Moabite, right? A place that is looked down upon. He didn't look at that and say, ew, I don't want to be involved with that. He didn't look at her inheritance and say, man, I want to be a part of my family. I don't want to take on another man's family line. He didn't do that. He chose her. He took on her life, and he became a part of her life. And that's what a kinsman redeemer would do back in the day. That's what Jesus does with us. He chooses us. No matter what we've done, where we've been, who we are. It's not about who we are, it's about who Jesus is. It's not about what we've done, it's about what Jesus has done. And that is the gospel in the Old Testament. It's amazing. The cool thing is, and the important thing for you guys to know, is Jesus doesn't come down from heaven and be like, hey, Riley, let's go. And just go. Boaz didn't go seek Ruth out and say, okay, Ruth, let's go. Ruth stepped out in faith. She didn't know if Boaz was going to choose her. She didn't know exactly where Boaz was. It's kind of cool. Let me see if I can find it. Look. So Naomi said to Ruth, go ahead, my daughter, go out into the fields. Ruth went out and began to glean the fields behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she found herself working in the field belonging to Boaz. It's like, oh, it just happened. As it turned out, she found herself in Boaz's field. No, God was like a divine appointment where Ruth trusted that Boaz is going to be out there, my kinsman redeemer. God provided. She stepped out in faith. For us, we have to take. God wants to see that we're hungry. He wants to see that we want to go with Him. We take that step of faith, and He meets us there. You guys understand that? He doesn't often just pluck us out. So for you guys, take that step of faith and have Him meet you there. Okay? Let Him be your kinsman redeemer. Let Him come in and redeem your past. Okay? If you already know Him, let Him come in and redeem the areas you haven't given to Him. If you already know Him, make a commitment to Him again if you have fallen away. Because He's so good that He chooses you. He chose you. And He's the only one that can save us from the plight we're in.
You have just been listening to a Freedom Student Ministry podcast.